Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. Get ready for heart-touching stories. Don't forget to subscribe and let's begin.
Story of dignity and reclamation. No one invited you to sit. My DIL scoffed, so I locked up my home back some lessons or learned the hard way. Some doors once closed stay closed. My name is Gloria Whitfield and I am 63 years old. I have soft hands that have kneaded 1,000 loaves of bread, a kitchen that still smells faintly of cinnamon on cold mornings, and a house that I have owned alone, proudly, stubbornly for 31 years. I raised my son Marcus in these rooms. I buried my husband from this front porch. I planted the rose bushes that line the walkway the same autumn I paid off the mortgage, and I still remember the way I cried when I burned that paper in the backyard, a small, quiet celebration that no one else saw. This house is not just property. It is proof that I survived. I want you to understand that before I tell you about Diane. Marcus married her 3 years ago, in a ceremony that was beautiful despite everything I felt in my gut about the arrangement. Diane is 31, sharp-featured and possessed of a particular kind of confidence that is indistinguishable in certain lights from contempt. She has a way of tilting her head when you speak, as though she is evaluating how much your words are worth and usually finding them lacking. I tried. Lord knows I tried. I brought a casserole to their apartment the week after the wedding. I called on Sundays. I made room for her opinions at holiday dinners even when they scraped against mine like two mismatched plates. I told myself, she is his choice, she is your daughter now, you will love her into it, but love is not a lever. You cannot force a door open by pushing harder, and some people are not looking for a mother-in-law, they are looking for a subordinate. The trouble started small, the way most catastrophes do. A comment here about how I still decorate with lace curtains. A laugh there when I mentioned I had never owned a smart television. At Christmas 2 years ago, she rearranged my kitchen while I was at church, moved the spice rack, stacked my good china on a lower shelf, reorganized the pantry into something she called more functional. I walked in and didn't recognize my own kitchen for 3 full seconds. That's a strange feeling, friends, to be a stranger in your own home. I said nothing. I moved everything back after they left, then came the conversation about them moving in. Marcus lost his position at the engineering firm last spring, downsizing, they said, the kind of thing that happens to good people, and the rent on their apartment was no small burden. Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening, voice careful and low, and asked whether they might stay with me for a few months while he found new work. Maybe 4 months, maybe 6 at most. I love my son. I said yes without hesitating. I should have hesitated. They moved in on a Saturday in early April. By the following Wednesday, Diane had purchased a new couch for the living room without asking me. That old one was too low, she said. It's hard on your back anyway, Gloria, you should thank me. I did not thank her. I sat very still and breathed through my nose and imagined the rose bushes outside opening. By the end of the first week, she had made a list, an actual written list of updates she felt the house needed. New light fixtures, a different paint color for the hallway, removal of what she called the clutter on my bookshelves. My bookshelves, which hold 31 years of memories, photographs, and the novels I have read on quiet winter evenings when I wanted company and couldn't bear the television. I told Marcus about the list. He rubbed the back of his neck, the way he has done since he was 9 years old when he was uncomfortable, and said, Mom, she just wants to feel settled, give her a little time. I gave her time. Time in Diane's case was not a healer, it was a foothold. By the second month, she had taken over the kitchen entirely. She posted a chore chart on the refrigerator, my refrigerator, assigning me tasks in my own home. I was listed under common area maintenance, as though I were a tenant in a dormitory. She bought organic milk and threw away my regular milk without asking. She started holding what she called household meetings on Sunday evenings in my living room, sitting at the head of my dining table like a woman who had earned that seat through some process I had not witnessed or agreed to. This is temporary, I reminded myself each night. Marcus will find work, they will go. The rose bushes will still be here, you will still be here. I was patient, I was gracious, I was a fool. The moment that changed everything happened on an ordinary Thursday afternoon in June. My friend Rosalind came by. We have had Thursday teas for 11 years, ever since her husband passed, and she needed somewhere to sit that wasn't her own silence. I made the chamomile, set out the good shortbread I keep in the blue tin, and we settled into the living room, into the chairs I like best by the window where the afternoon light falls in at an angle I find beautiful. Rosalind was telling me about her granddaughter's first steps, and I was laughing, really laughing, the kind that loosens something in your chest. When Diane came downstairs, she stopped in the doorway. She looked at us, at Rosalind, at me, at the tea things on the table, with an expression I can only describe as proprietary displeasure. As though we had intruded upon her space, as though we required explanation. Gloria, she said, we have a Zoom call for Marcus's interview prep at 3. We need the living room quiet. I looked at the clock. It was 1:30. We'll be done well before 3, Diane, I said, keeping my voice even. She crossed her arms. She looked at Rosalind's chair, my chair, a wingback I reupholstered with my own hands in 1998, and said with that particular tilt of her head, no one invited you to sit in that chair. Room went so quiet that I could hear the garden outside. Rosalind set down her cup very carefully. I sat very still. And something in me, something that had been patient for 2 full months, something that had moved everything back and said nothing and breath through its nose, went perfectly, completely calm. Not the calm of acceptance, the calm of decision. "Rosalind," I said softly, "would you excuse me for just a moment?" I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and called Marcus at work. He picked up on the second ring. "Mom, everything okay?" I told him in plain and measured language exactly what had just been said and to whom in my living room on a Thursday afternoon. There was a long silence. "Mom, I'm sure she didn't mean," I said. "Marcus, I need you to come home this evening, please, we need to speak." Then I went back to the living room, sat down beside Rosalind, picked up my tea, and we talked about her granddaughter's first steps until the cup was empty. Diane did not come back downstairs. After Rosalind left, I sat for a long while in the quiet of the house and thought very carefully about what I was going to do. I am 63 years old, I have known grief, I have known real hardship. I am not frightened of a difficult conversation, and I am not frightened of being thought unkind by someone who has not earned my consideration. I thought about the mortgage paper burning in the backyard. I thought about what it means to own something not just on paper, but in the marrow. Then I went upstairs and I changed the lock on the room I use as my personal study, the room where I keep my important papers, my mother's jewelry, my journals going back to 1989. I had been meaning to do it for weeks, ever since I noticed things had been moved in there. I installed the new lock myself. It took 20 minutes. I have always been handy. When Marcus came home that evening, I had dinner on the table. I am not the kind of woman who withholds meals from people to make a point. I fed them and then I asked Diane to please be present for our conversation, and we all three sat at the dining table and I spoke. I said, "I love my son, I am glad I could offer help during a hard season. I want his marriage to be strong." And I said, "This is my home. It was my home before either of you were part of my life, and it will be my home when this chapter is over. I do not require permission to sit in my own chairs, to have my friends at my own table, to arrange my own kitchen or keep my own bookshelves." I said this without anger, and that, I think, is what gave the words their weight. I was not shouting. I was simply stating the terms of reality. I told them that the arrangement we had was a kindness I had extended freely, and that, like all freely extended kindnesses, it came with the expectation of basic respect. Not deference, not gratitude performed on demand, just respect. The ordinary humankind, I said. If that cannot be the nature of this household, then we need to discuss a different living arrangement. And I said it clearly, looking at Diane, and I did not look away. There was a long silence. Marcus looked at the table. Diane's expression went through several versions of itself, defensive, then calculating, then something more fragile that I had not expected. She said finally, very quietly, "I didn't think you'd push back." And I thought, there it is. That is the whole thing right there. She had not thought I would push back because she had understood my patience as passivity. She had interpreted kindness as weakness and accommodation as vacancy. She had seen an open door and decided no one lived behind it. "Live here," I said simply. "I have always lived here." The weeks that followed were not easy, and I will not pretend otherwise. There was tension. There was a long, teary phone call between Diane and Marcus that I could hear through the ceiling and chose not to strain to understand. There were 2 days when she barely looked at me and the kitchen felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. Marcus came to me on the third day, sat across from me and said, "Mom, I owe you an apology." I told him I didn't want an apology. I told him I wanted a partner in maintaining his mother's dignity. "He is a good man, my son." He heard me slowly, not all at once and not without friction. Things shifted. Diane began asking before changing things. She knocked before entering rooms. She stopped holding household meetings, and in their place we developed something more organic. The three of us in the kitchen after dinner, sometimes talking, and it was not always comfortable, but it was honest. I learned that she grew up in a home where she had very little control over anything, and that her need to reorganize spaces was not malice but armor. I did not excuse the behavior, but I understood it better. Understanding is not the same as forgetting. Marcus found a new position in October, a good one, better than the last. They moved into their own apartment on the 1st of November. The morning they left, Diane stood in my doorway with her coat on and her key in her hand, and she said, "Thank you for not throwing us out." I said, "I would never have thrown Marcus out, and I would have made the right choice, whatever that looked like." She nodded. She almost smiled. It was not a warm moment exactly, but it was an honest one, and I have come to believe that honesty in its way is its own kind of warmth. The Thursday after they left, Rosalind came back for tea. I had the chamomile ready and the shortbread in the blue tin and the chairs arranged the way I like them, by the window where the afternoon light falls just so. We talked about her granddaughter, who is walking confidently now, unafraid of falling. We talked about the roses, which had come back beautifully this year despite the hard summer. Somewhere in the middle of the second cup, Rosalind looked at me over the rim of her mug and said, "You know, I've never seen you as steady as you were that day." I thought about that for a moment. I thought about 63 years. I thought about a mortgage paper burning in the backyard and a woman standing alone watching it go, crying in a way that felt like release. I thought about what it means to know deeply and in your bones that you belong somewhere, not because someone granted you belonging, but because you built it yourself, room by room and year by year, out of ordinary stubborn love. "Earned the right to be steady in this house," I told her. And I took a long, slow sip of my tea in my chair by my window in my home. Some things are not taken. They are simply quietly reclaimed.